Ladies, gentlemen, and raiders of all Ark, blueprints are a big deal in Ark Raiders. They heavily define what you are able to craft and thus bring into raids regularly, as even if you have a mountain of materials to craft with, you still need the blueprints to be able to craft the stuff that you want to begin with, unless you're a ferro, stitcher hero, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. That said though, blueprints are important to most people. Everyone wants blueprints, and the ways to get blueprints as easily as possible are quite vague and unclear as far as what the game tells you itself. So, the player base, the community, has been doing quite a lot to try and work out the actual mechanics behind blueprint drops, their sources, their chances, all that stuff just to try and get the most efficiency we can out of farming blueprints. So today we're going to go over an updated blueprint farming guide for patch 1.3, talk about any changes to blueprints or anything relevant to blueprint farming in the coming times, and then we'll go over my specific blueprint farm routes if you're looking for something quite that particular as well, and that will all be at the end. Starting off then, I want to begin with just players seeming to agree that after patch 1.3, which hit last week, blueprint drop rates have gone up a fair amount. I've found quite a few myself the last couple of days. After patch 1.2, which was the Northline update and the release of Stella Montis, it seemed like all blueprint drop rates did go down a ton compared to how they were originally. Players were pretty convinced that was the case, and then the community has seemingly swung their opinion after patch 1.3 happened a week later. So it's of course entirely possible this is just pure coincidence, and a large amount of people were unlucky for 1 week and now are getting much luckier the week after, but there are enough people feeling this, myself and the people I play with included, that it seems very possible that blueprint drop rates were stealthily increased compared to what they were last week just across the board. During the 1 week between patch 1.2 and patch 1.3, my drop rates on blueprints were lower. Since patch 1.3, even just in the last couple of hours, I have found like 8 blueprints just doing specific short spot check runs, which is pretty crazy in comparison. Blueprint drop rates definitely feel higher. To sort of back this up, over the last week we've done a lot of testing and a lot of blueprint runs to sort of trying to nail down some of the more obscure parts of it all, and we did actually notice a change in drops and drop rates that seem to happen right around the same time as the patch. One of the big things that we have been testing, and I'm pretty much 100% sure on at this point, is that the Electromagnetic Storm major map condition has increased blueprint drop rates while it's active. Night raids do also have this effect, but Electromagnetic Storm's description does not mention loot at all, so this comes as a bit more of a surprise. In our run so far, it seems like the Storm has an even higher blueprint drop rate than night raids do, but 3 of us testing this is a pretty small sample size, so take that with a bit of a grain of salt. However, one other theory is the concept that some select blueprints are more tied to map conditions than they are to anything else, and the snaphook is our best example, being seemingly much higher drop rate during Electromagnetic Storm than at any other time or in any other place. I had seen multiple Reddit posts mentioning that they found snaphook blueprints during the Electromagnetic Storm. I found my snaphook blueprint during Electromagnetic Storm, and after all this, I got my friends to check and see if they could find them during the storm, and that was where they all found their snaphook blueprints as well. And while most of this was before patch 1.3, after patch 1.3 we were still testing stuff, we did more, and we found it at least as good, if not better, because Hollow, who also does videos on this channel, found 2 snaphook blueprints in 1 raid during Electromagnetic Storm. So again, bit of a grain of salt, no way to fully confirm this, but it seems highly likely that Electromagnetic Storm both has increased blueprint drop rates in general, and an increased drop rate of specifically snaphook blueprints as well, even across multiple different maps and multiple different locations. The other main thing worth discussing on this front is the fact that some blueprints seem to have significantly higher drop rates in specific locations or container types. This one is much harder to nail down, and I'm still doing my testing for a lot of this stuff before I'm happy in confirming any of it, but there is one of these that I'm fairly certain about at this point and ready to share my findings for, which is the breach room underground on Blue Gate. Underneath the reinforced reception area, to be more specific, you enter reinforced reception at the top, there's a couple of ropes that you can slide down to the underground, then you're in a larger open lobby type area. There's a door on the right side of the room that you would go through to follow the yellow color puzzle if that was what the computer showed, and through here, which is right here on your map while you're underground, there is a breachable door. Inside of this breachable door, there are 2 security lockers if you have the security breach skill point node, but it's worth noting that I don't have that skill node, so the numbers I'm about to share do not include the security lockers, and they were also all done during day raid raids, just to avoid major map conditions muddying up the statistics here. Before the patch, I heard this room was more or less a good 50% chance or so of blueprints, and that they were nearly always specifically light stick blueprints or a purple augment blueprint. Light sticks obviously not that big of a deal, they're not very important, but augment blueprints are extremely rare, and this is the only place I have seen a large enough number of people directly call out and corroborate as being a place that they found one that I thought it was worth looking into. Today alone, literally over the course of about an hour, Josh and I were doing quick runs to just loot this room and get out to test how accurate this is, and in our experience, the room averaged out to 100% blueprint drop chance during day raids. For every raid that we went here, we got 1 blueprint, which is to say that we did 10 raids, got a total of 10 blueprints. 2 of those raids, we didn't get any blueprints, so it's not literally guaranteed, but on 2 of the other raids, we got 2 blueprints from the same room. So it evens out at being 10 blueprints over 10 raids, which is sort of crazy. And I even also found a blaze grenade blueprint in a random locker while going to the extract from this location. So again, all of this was during day raids, not even night or storm, and the average rate that I was hearing before the patch was closer to 50%. So as far as I'm concerned, this room is both pretty much confirmed to be a great source of blueprints in general, especially light stick and augment blueprints. And even if you don't care about light stick blueprints, because no one really does, they are still worth 5,000 coins to actually sell. The other thing then is I think this is just further backing up the idea that blueprint drop rate has increased in patch 1.3 compared to 1.2, because this is just an obscenely high rate during day raids. That said, I would love to hear thoughts from you guys in the comments on if you think the drop rates have changed over the last few days, and especially I would like to hear if you know of any other rooms or locations in the game that are like this one on Bluegate, a room where you keep getting the same kind of blueprint over and over and over, because this is the only one that I have heard mentioned enough that it felt worth properly testing, and the results of it are quite positive, which leads me to believe it is entirely possible there are more rooms like this through the game that are tied to specifically high drop rates on very particular blueprints. Aside from that then, especially as we get closer to December and the project completion and the expedition system that pretty much wipes our characters clean and resets us back to having nothing, I wanted to just take a moment and talk about my thoughts on that related to blueprints. Honestly, I'm really not looking forward to the expedition. I have been playing the game quite heavily since launch, and I still am missing a ton of relevant blueprints, despite the fact that like half of the activities I do in this game are blueprint farming. I only got the snaphook blueprint a few days ago, and it has completely changed the way that I look at movement in the game, because I can consistently have a snaphook in my inventory and not feel like it's going to be losing an incredible amount of value if I die. I can keep it in my safe pocket, pull it out and use it, then put it back in my safe pocket, and if I lose it, I can craft a new one. It's expensive, but I can. The expedition will reset all blueprints completely, and so when we take part in that, if we take part in that, we lose every single blueprint as well. I've already heard a bunch of people saying that they don't even want to do the expedition anymore specifically because of blueprints and not wanting to lose what they've already got, and to me that means that there might be some sort of change needed to this system before it happens. You want the game to be enjoyable for people who choose not to do the expedition, so you want to have goals that make sense to chase even if you aren't resetting, but you also don't want the expedition to feel like such a detrimental setback that people just don't want to engage with the system to begin with. So in my mind, in some way, the blueprint system probably should change, or expedition needs to just adjust to have some blueprint leniency. One thing or the other, or both. A couple of suggestions that I've seen from players for blueprint changes are things like being able to turn enough copies of the same item into its raw blueprint if you have a large pile of them, like 10 guns for that gun's blueprint, something like that. Whatever the number is to make it feel balanced for the developers, it doesn't matter, but the idea is good because it would give away to somewhat target farm blueprints that you want, which would be ideal. Another suggestion that I've seen is that there should be just a chance of learning the blueprint when you recycle an item, which is of course logical as you're essentially dismantling the item, and when you take something apart with your hands, you learn a fair amount about how to put it back together too. Maybe we could have some sort of blueprint weighting system so you either don't get blueprints you already have, or maybe just weight it more towards giving you ones that you don't have learned already, or maybe even just some sort of trade out where if you have like 5 blueprints you already know, you can turn them in and get a random new blueprint that you don't know, guaranteed to be one that you haven't learned, something along those lines. And the final thing that I've seen suggested is the ability to hold on to 1, maybe 2 blueprints as you go through the expedition. So after you reset, you still have 1 or 2 blueprints remaining. Let's say you think the snaphook is the most important blueprint in the game. Maybe you should be able to hold on to specifically only that singular one when we wipe and have it transfer over to your fresh character. I don't think any of these are guaranteed to improve the experience at all. I think everyone will have their own opinions on whether this should or shouldn't happen, and in the long run, I'm more interested in seeing what Embark chooses to do or not do than I am actually in seeing my own suggestions actually work out, because I firmly believe that the devs have more data and information about blueprints than any of us do, especially when it comes to their drop rates, because we're still doing our best to just try and piece it all together. Whereas the devs, of course, know exactly how it all works, or at least in theory they do, which brings me to my next topic here really quick. Back in patch 1.2 with the North Line update and Stella Montis being unlocked and all that, there were also 6 new blueprints added to the game. One for the new legendary Aphelion energy rifle, and then new blueprints for each of the new mines and grenades as well. That said, not a single one of those blueprints was actually dropping for any player in the planet, despite the total blueprint count in the game going up. That led us to some interesting conclusions, but before we get there, it's worth mentioning that with patch 1.3, the Aphelion blueprint did start dropping, and it's because of an actual game change that was listed in the patch notes, stating that it increased the drop rate of this blueprint, and the truth seems to be that they increased the drop rate from 0% to seemingly 100%, with it specifically coming from the matriarch's core after you kill her, which is the gigantic ball part that you can loot after she explodes. So if you want that specific blueprint, that's where you go to get it. As for the other 5 new blueprints, as of this moment in time, I have still not heard a single person claim anything like a deadline blueprint drop or a secret grenade blueprint drop, so those ones are still seemingly not available in the game, seemingly either until a new patch that increases their drop rate, looks like that one, or maybe they're tied to like an event or a major map condition that just isn't in the game yet. Either way, the Aphelion blueprint now does exist, the others are still seemingly unfindable right now, and this isn't the first time that this was a thing, as on initial release, the Tempest, Bobcat, and Volcano blueprint were either non-existent or unbelievably rare, and those did start to pop up a ton after the 1.2 patch as well, which was seemingly all tied to the patch note, adjusted blueprint drop rates from Raider containers. All of that to say, Embark is either purposefully drip feeding us the rarer, more impactful blueprints by making them inaccessible until they decide to make them function, or the blueprint drop system is so much more complex than we could possibly imagine, to the point that it's difficult for even the developers themselves to keep track and adjust them the way that they want to. I'm more inclined to believe it's the first one. I think they are competent enough that that's more likely at this immediate moment, but of course either one is possible, we just don't know. Moving on to the actual blueprint farm routes and stuff like that then, I'm just going to go back over our blueprint farm routes from previous videos. Nothing has changed much for these as of the moment, so these will be the same as they were previously. I just like including them here so that you have everything relevant all in one place. That said, let's get into it, and we'll start with our short loot routes. The entire point of these is that you go for 1, maybe 2 places in close proximity, run directly there at the start of the raid using adrenaline shots to get there as quickly as possible, loot the place, and then if you get a blueprint, stick it in your safe pocket, and whether you do or don't get the blueprint, extract immediately so you can just load into a fresh raid and check the same location again. Do this on repeat. This applies to the one that we just talked about in the Blue Grate Underground. That room is great for this. It's fantastic for this concept, but it is worth noting that during any sort of major condition, that room can be a bit of a hotspot for players that might result in combat, so just be ready if you do choose to do that one specifically. Aside from that, there are 3 more spots like this that I want to directly call out. The first one is on Dam Battlegrounds. This spot right here is the end of a broken down bridge. Pop up over to here, and then from the very edge of the bridge, you can tap backwards to drop off, and then as soon as you fall off, hold forwards and hit the vault button, and if you have the right angle, you'll just pop up right into this hidey hole here. This has a high chance of weapon case spawn, seemingly around 50%. It's supposed to be a hidden area that can only be accessed with a snaphook or a zipline, but this trick lets you get in there for free, and you can also have other valuable cases in here too. There can be things like medical duffel bags or grenade cases, which all can have blueprints inside as well. Next spots are going to be on the Buried City map. First is up here at the northern side of this train station part of the map. This is super far away from pretty much anything else of relevance, so players will only go here if their only goal is this spot really, which does make the competition relatively low. This is a breachable door, which means everything inside is higher quality, and inside there are always 2 breach boxes, and then there can be a weapon case on the left here at a reasonably high spawn rate. Grenade case and ammo case can also spawn in here too. Then the next one of these spots for just sort of quick smash and grab is this building over here. Top floor of it has a room with breachable doors, so it's full of higher quality than average loot just in general. This is in a more traveled area of the map, but this room itself still seems quite unknown by the player base, which means it is a safer one to just hit up, grab what's inside, and then bail off the map with your rewards. Past that, we have longer routes for if you are willing to bring in a little bit more of a kit, willing to compete a little bit harder, and even get into fights over your loot. For those, I have 2 big recommendations. First, bring at least a looting Mark II augment. They are relatively cheap to craft once you have Gearbench level 2, and it gives you a second safety pouch, which is important for the second recommendation, which is fill your safety pouch with blueprints, and then go maybe find like 1 blueprint past that before leaving, meaning if you have 2 safe pockets, once you find 3 blueprints total that you care about, that means that it's time to leave instantly, even if you are still in the middle of the route, because the 2 that are in your pouch are safe, but the 3rd one is at risk if you die, so you want to get out with what you got. As for the route itself, we'll start by going over my nice long Spaceport route, and then we'll talk about the nice long Buried City route too. Starting with Spaceport then, and then starting from the eastern side to the western side, but if you spawn on the west side of the map, just do it in reverse pretty much. Starting here, in the vehicle maintenance yellow loot zone, stairs up from the ground level to the 2nd floor. These couches over here in the corner, this is a potential weapon case spawn location. There is a breachable room 1 floor up from here as well. However, I don't think there's weapon case spawns in there. It is just general high value loot, but it's still worth mentioning so that you know about it. Then there is a little tower here on the map. You can climb up the broken walls beside it to get up access to it quicker, or there is a rope from the ground level that you can just ride the whole way up. There are a couple of these towers that we'll be hitting up, and they are basically just small but dense loot zones. This one has a potential weapon case spawn over here in this specific spot, and there's also a security locker in this room if you have the security breach skill. Southwest of this tower in the fuel lines area right here, most of the pipes are horizontal along the ground, but this one is vertical, sticking out of the ground, which means that to walk up to it, you then have to vault into it to get inside. But in this pipe is one potential weapon case spawn location. From here we go around to the inside of the departure building, which is a red loot zone, so a bit higher player traffic, but we are only going to one spot very close to the outside. This is on the southwest side of the building, very close to the external entrance. Right in this spot is a breachable door to like a staff bathroom or something of the sort. Inside here is a load of red lockers that have solid loot inside of them. Again, this is a breach door room, so higher value loot in general. And then in the back corner of the room, in this shower stall here type thing, this is a potential weapon case spawn spot as well, with a seemingly decently high spawn rate. From here we go to another one of those unmarked towers on the map here. Again, you can climb up the wall to enter from the side, or ride up a rope from ground level the whole way. And at the top there is another potential weapon case spawn location in here, as well as another security locker if you have the security breach skill. Then we head north to the arrival building. Again, this is a high value loot area, so it's a bit dangerous on the inside, but we are sticking to the outer edges where there is higher value with lesser danger. On the west side of the building, on the outside, there are 2 separate breachable door rooms in a line. These both function very similarly to each other, both high value loot areas behind breachable doors, but I've only seen confirmed weapon case spawns in the south of these 2 rooms. So the south room is part of this route, but I want you to know that the north one exists just if you want loot in general. Then outside of the southern breach room, there is a ladder right here that goes up to the roof, and on this spot here on the roof is a potential weapon case spawn. On my run here, I had a medical bag instead of the weapon case, but the med bag had a blueprint anyways, just to show that that does work and that this spot is relevant. And that is the end of the sort of safer route options here. Though if you want to take a short but risky detour for one extra high value loot room, you can drop in through the skylight of the arrival building down to the top floor of the building itself, and in the southeast corner of the building on this floor is a breachable door room, and so inside of it, it is full of high value loot as well as a potential weapon case spawn on the desks in here as well. But this will place you firmly inside of a red loot zone, which is an area that players are willing to fight over. So that last room there I think is a big risk that is entirely up to you depending on what you have before going for it and how confident you are in your ability to get out. That does it for the Spaceport route then, so now let's pop over to Buried City and quickly go back over my existing routes for that map. That said, starting on the west side, the first spot to hit up is the one that we just talked about as a good single spot extract run, up by Murano Station on the north side, the breachable door here. After that, you want to head over to the house over here. On the roof, there is an attic window that you can enter very easily, and right above the entry from the inside up to the attic, there is a potential weapon case spawn over here. Jump back out of the window you went in to come here, drop down to the ground level and jump into the window across the street, and right in this corner is another potential weapon case spawn. Then jump back out the window, take a right turn, and hop in the window across the street in the building dead ahead, rappel up the rope in here in the little staircase to skip the staircase, and then on the top floor in the kitchen, on the counter itself, is a potential weapon case spawn location. Exit this building out of the window right beside here to get to a sheet metal bridge, cross it to the rooftops, and then drop down to this area here for a zip line that goes across. Jump off of the zip line onto the middle platform, and this is a high value loot room on your map as well. Any container in here has a decent chance of holding a blueprint, and there are at least 2 potential weapon case spawn locations in this room as well. Southwest of here, outside the west side of the Grandioso apartments in the bushes here, is a potential raider cache spawn location. Then slightly southwest of that, in front of this vehicle here, is another potential raider cache spawn location. Listen for the sound, the ticking. If you don't hear it, just keep running. If you're feeling spicy, there are 2 potential weapon cases on the rooftops of the Grandioso apartments, one at the top of the stairs in the north building tucked around the corner on the right of this unit here, and one spawn can be on top of the south building on the roof above the stairs themselves over here. But these buildings are generally quite full of players, and for 2 very low chance weapon cases, I'd say that's probably a bit dangerous to do. Moving on, our next spot is a super low traffic area for the actual value it can offer. Simply go up to the top floor, and then there are 2 entrances to the room itself. Either one requires breaching, and then there's a bunch of cabinets and drawers and stuff inside, potential weapon case spawn, duffel bags, grenade cases, stuff like that, and decent chances at a blueprint drop, as it is a high quality loot room in general. The next spot then I've noticed being a bit higher player traffic recently, so it's not the safest anymore, but I'd still say it's safer than Grandioso Apartments and more worth it because there's a much higher chance of getting stuff that you want from it. It's also safer than some of our other things on the list too. But this building here is a secret loot room. You come to the south rooftop, you climb up, and then from here you can jump into the window of the building across, turn 180, and repeat this to jump back into the window of the south building. This is the high value loot area. 2 potential weapon case spawns in here that I know of personally, and every container in here has higher than average blueprint drop chances too. Over here by these trees, this is a potential raider cache spawn. Then in this alleyway here is a potential raider cache spawn as well. Listen for the sound. If there's no sound, keep moving. In Plaza Rosa over here, the building on the east side right over there is a pharmacy. There is another pharmacy we'll be talking about in a minute, but I want to preface this by saying these pharmacies are high value loot areas the whole way down. But unlike the previous secret rooms, they are multiple floors of loot, multiple rooms of loot, and lots of places to search that all can have blueprints. But these are also much more well known by the community and much more traveled by players because they're great for things that aren't just blueprints. So you're not unlikely to get in a fight if you come to a pharmacy. But the sheer density of containers in a high value loot area like this makes it a great blueprint farming zone if you are willing to take on that risk. And it also is great for stuff like money farming or med items and stuff like that too. Just for the sake of mentioning it, you do have to breach the door to get in these pharmacies to begin with too, which is part of how we can tell that it is a higher value loot area. Just northeast of here then is the Red Tower. This is an area that I find players in sometimes, but not too frequently. If you enter from the east side, there's a window that you can go in, and then just up the stairs is a small high value loot area. There's red lockers, there's a potential weapon case spawn by the railing of the staircase itself, and then if you head out the hole in the wall, up the ladder, and then take a right turn, and then around the corner on the right again, against this wall is another potential weapon case spawn location. This building over here, just a bit northeast of that, is easily entered from the east side on the roofs through a little hole in the wall, and again the railing of the staircase right here is a potential weapon case spawn. Then the final spot of note is right here in Piazza Arbusto. On the east side of the road there is another pharmacy. This one I find is a little bit less commonly traveled than the first pharmacy we talked about, but still decent chances of encountering other players, so it's a bit of danger, but tons of high value loot containers with chances of blueprints. Those are all the places that you can sort of go to in one by one in a line. Generally, if you're trying to be as quick as possible, I'd recommend just picking the closest high value loot room to where you spawn, whatever that is, get there before anyone else, clean out all the valuable stuff, then continue along the path until you have stuff valuable enough that you'd be upset if you died, and then extract wherever that point is for you. And that just about does it for today, everyone. An updated blueprint farm guide for how things are in patch 1.3 as of this current moment, talking about changes that seem to have happened in the most recent patch, new information that we have learned over the last week or so, tested and more or less confirmed to the best of our abilities, though again, I would love to hear from you guys if you have had matching experiences to sort of help us work out whether these things are properly a fact or just something that feels correct. And then just a bit of a talk about the current state of blueprints in the game, and ending off by going back over all of our specific blueprint farm routes too. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and I wish you the best of luck getting blueprints of your own, and hopefully our next game patch doesn't totally shift drop rates again, at least not downwards, because you know it'd be great if it changes them to be even more plentiful. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.